The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Today's Corporate Financial Planning, Can Your Spreadsheet Software Keep Up? Presented by Jason Lin and Mike Matthews. A little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can submit any questions you have. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar, and we will answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. We are also recording this presentation, and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees, as well as those who registered but were not able to attend. And finally, please take a moment towards the end of the presentation to answer our survey questions. With that said, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to attend this webinar. We're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions and help you find an easier way to run your business by providing you with tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. We've invited Centage here today because they are industry experts in intelligent planning, budgeting, and forecasting software. So whether you're here researching a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions you have. And lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. We encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Today's speakers are Jason Lin and Mike Matthews. Jason is the Chief Financial Officer at Centage with over 20 years of experience in finance, accounting, and administration. Jason has extensive experience driving profitability, growth, and operational efficiency at leading technology companies. Mike is Manager of Sales Solutions Engineers at Centage. With over 10 years of industry experience, Mike leads the solutions engineering team and works daily with customers to identify their needs and develop a plan to streamline budgeting and planning processes with Planning Maestro. They will use their combined experience to lead today's discussion, in which we'll explore 6 reasons why spreadsheets can't keep up with the pace of your business and 6 ways to future-proof your budgeting and planning processes. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to our presenters.
Great. Thank you, Courtney. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this webinar and product demo. I hope everyone is doing well and enjoying this holiday season. I know everyone is really busy, especially at this time of year, so we really do appreciate you carving out some time to be with us today. Mike has a great demo lined up for us, so I do think that your time will be well spent here. Again, my name is Jason Lin. I am CFO here at Centage Corporation. The topic of our webinar today is, in terms of financial planning, can your spreadsheets and Excel models keep up? Now, I've been in finance for over 20 years, and I would say that Excel is definitely the go-to legacy tool when it comes to planning and forecasting. A lot of things have changed over the course of 2 decades, right? The pace and speed of business, demands from our stakeholders. So the question becomes, can the legacy tool keep up? That's what we're going to dig into. But first, just a super quick overview of Centage for those of you who are not familiar with us. We are a Boston-based company. Our customers use our Planning Maestro software for their corporate planning, forecasting, and analytics. It's a very modern, very easy-to-use solution. We've got over 10,000 users and a lot of accolades from industry experts. So after today's demo, I encourage everyone to go to Centage.com for more information on Planning Maestro and on Centage. Okay, so here's the agenda today. We're going to talk about why spreadsheets cannot keep up with today's pace of business. We'll talk about ways to future-proof your planning processes so that you and your team can be successful today and tomorrow. And we'll get into some best practices for selecting the right solution to replace your legacy spreadsheets. And of course, we'll have the Planning Maestro demo in there as well. Okay, but first, we have a live polling question here, and we appreciate everyone's participation here. And the poll question is, what is your top line and business outlook for 2022? What is your top line and business outlook for 2022? We appreciate everyone's participation here.
And we are going to leave that poll open for about 30 seconds. So thank you to those who have already answered, and we are going to close it out shortly.
Great.
Okay, looks like that's all of our responses. So the results are 40% anticipate that they'll maintain their current revenue, and they're 60% anticipating a growing revenue.
Great. That's great to see. So we did a session like this in I think it was mid 2020, really at the height of the pandemic and the shutdown. And what I would tell you is that the answers were much different than this. So it's really great to see the positive sentiment here as we move into 2022. Okay, so I wanted to start with some thoughts on what it's like to be an SMB company. We at Centage, we primarily service the SMB in the mid-market. So we definitely get a lot of feedback from our customers as we work with them. But this isn't new news for many of us, right? It's not a cakewalk in the SMB. Looking at the slide, we have data from one study here showing that more than 80% of small businesses fail due to poor cash flow management. And we hear about these challenges all the time from our customers. SMBs are struggling with things like limited or inconsistent cash flow. They aren't prepared for the unexpected, whether that's unexpected expenses or a sudden dip in sales and revenue. Some companies come to us and they've never even had an annual budget in place. So I think that due to these challenges, finance leaders are starting to pivot in an attempt to be better prepared, whether it's scenario planning to be prepared for multiple scenarios or automating legacy manual processes. So look, it's a bit dramatic, but if there ever was a time when the risk is real, quote unquote, is a true statement, I think that that's now. I just think about all of the businesses that have gone under since the pandemic hit. I know if I personalize this, as I drive around my town, it's pretty noticeable the number of restaurants, shops, coffee shops, gyms that used to be there and that aren't anymore. But that's the reality of living in and being in the SMB. Fluctuations in your financial forecast, that can be the difference of staying in business or not. So some of the things on the slide here: confidence and accuracy in your plan, speed and agility to proactively make changes if necessary. These things absolutely should be the priorities for business leaders. Okay, so a couple of signs that it's time to move away from Excel spreadsheets and models. We have too much data. We have too much data. We're spending too much time fixing errors. We can't collaborate. If you find yourself saying these things or things along these lines, it's probably time to take a step back and think about if you really want to trust something as important as your financial projection to what can be a very error-prone Excel spreadsheet. So these are just a few quotes, but those of us who have been doing this for a while can think of a lot more. My favorite personal story is we used to have this Excel model that was either so large or so corrupt that you could open it, you could work in it, you could save it, but when you tried to close it, when you tried to close Excel, it crashed Windows every single time. So you literally had to be like, okay, I'm gonna go make some changes to the model, but I need to close out of and save Word, PowerPoint, email, everything, because here we go, it's gonna crash my system. I mean, talk about inefficiency. And look, I just told my personal Excel story, but no one's immune to it if you look to the stories on this slide, right? I think Boeing is more than 50 billion in revenue or something like that and 100,000 employees. This Solar City example is priceless, undervaluing an investment by $400 million because of a formula error in Excel. So read these tales, and I'd ask everyone to think about the number of times that you've said or someone on your team has said, "Oh, I found the problem. You know what? I didn't copy that formula all the way down, or that lookup wasn't working right for whatever reason." And you know, if you catch it, if you're lucky and you catch it before your board meeting, your investor call, then you're lucky. But if not, then suddenly you're undervalued by 400 million. Okay, so 6 reasons why spreadsheets can't keep up. I'm not going to read these to you, but I think it's starting to become pretty apparent. With Excel, functionality is limited, right? There's no integration, there's no automation, and you know, the biggest thing to me is that it's just not scalable. As leaders, I'd argue that we should be concerned with not only success, accuracy, efficiency today, but achieving those things down the road as well as our organizations grow. So how do we do that, right? How do modern finance teams and finance leaders make sure that they're successful as they scale in this increasingly competitive, increasingly demanding environment? Part of it is leaving behind legacy manual offline tools like Excel and adopting cloud-based solutions that do things that Excel was never meant for, honestly. You want to be able to integrate to your GL so you're pulling in data accurately and quickly. You want the flexibility to quickly run different scenarios and models. You want the peace of mind that comes with a secure solution. And you want to be able to easily collaborate with your team and your business partners, right? And another legacy Excel comment that I hear all the time is, hey, what version of the budget file are you working off of? I have version 23. Are you in version 22 or 23? It's just so easy to see how things can go wrong there. Okay, great. I think we have one last live polling question here before I hand it over to Mike for the product demo. And the polling question is, what are the top challenges with budgeting, forecasting, and reporting? What are your top challenges with budgeting, forecasting, and reporting? And please select all that apply.
Thank you to those that have already answered. Yeah, and we're going to give it a couple more seconds to get those last responses.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm now closing out the poll. So here are those results, and it looks like we have about 33% using limited budgets and resources, 50% lack of automated workflows, another 50% data quality and no single source of truth. Just 17% are worried about inaccurate forecasting, and then 67% using manual or error-prone spreadsheets.
That's great. Thanks, Courtney. It sounds like we have a lot of Excel error stories out there as well. So that's it's kind of a common theme. So great, and that's great. So we'll pass it along to Mike, and I do think that Mike will address a few of those things as he takes us through this Planning Maestro demo here.
Okay, and Mike, you are now the presenter.
All right,
we are
awesome.
seeing that demo. Yep, you're all good.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's dive in here. So, you know, first and foremost, this is our welcome page, you know, of Planning Maestro, you know, where everyone with a license would centrally enter the tool. You know, depending on your security preferences, you may see a lot less tiles on this screen here, as well as a lot less sections of Planning Maestro, you know, coming down this left-hand side here. But now, really, it boils down to 5 major sections. So, you know, the first piece here is what we call the data modeler. So this is where we'll come in, you know, and we'll house the integration to your general ledger, you know, where we'd house the various segments and dimensions that ultimately make up your full string GL account. You know, Planning Maestro is going to allow you to connect to your general ledger right out of the box, model the organization exactly how you need to, you know, whether it's how your certain companies roll up, or below that, different, you know, divisions, departments, programs, projects, product lines, you know, obviously your financial statements, how they roll up. Now, really recreate and enforce, the structural hierarchy and roll-ups that you have today. And then deploy that right into Planning Maestro for the slicing and dicing of reports, of budgets, even defining security and workflows at each of those levels of detail, if it made sense to. Right out of the box, Planning Maestro is designed to enforce your chart of accounts and structural hierarchies and tree roll-ups one-to-one, as well as stay in sync with that. So as anything changes, maybe you add a new account number, maybe you acquire a new company, what have you, that can just automatically flow in from your general ledger. The next piece here is what we call the financial intelligence setup. This is where we define a lot of the seasonal spreads or trends of yearly budgeted numbers, where you can define payment and receivable schedules for balance sheet and cash flow projections, any automated allocation methods. So during our training implementation process, you'd work hand in hand with a dedicated consultant to build out these data defaults, if you will. And this is where essentially we differ from Excel in probably the most glaring way, is that instead of having these complex formulas and calculations, we're more of a modular based system where I'm just defining how I want to spread something, then I can pick and choose that rather than tracking down a broken link or a formula. So very, very unique to Planning Maestro. All of this is pre-built and kind of in your system on day one. The planning section here, where you'll come in, you'll have very customizable input screens, for the budgeting of things like expenses, revenue, personnel, and payroll. You'll create an unlimited set of customizable drivers and assumptions, things like maybe square footage or units sold or head count, hours worked, what have you. Run an unlimited set of scenarios on those assumptions, as well as manage workflow. So if you decide you want to bring in, again, multiple department heads and different budget stakeholders, you'd be able to very easily define security so that each person that you bring in, they're just going to be able to see what you want them to see, edit what you want them to edit. And you'll be able to define various assignments and tasks for people, set up due dates, email reminders, obviously, accept and reject budgets. So we'll spend some time in here today, highlighting the major sections. Another piece that really, separates us from, really Excel and any other competitor out there. This workflow is very much automated. You can send emails and all that stuff to really know, okay, this person is responsible for this piece of the organization. I know when they come into the tool, they're just going to see that part of the organization, so they can't really, create or break anything. So really nice to kind of keep and make sure everybody's just seeing and doing their work and what makes sense for them. And then obviously the last piece here is our reporting. We have kind of our ad hoc auto consolidation kind of roll-ups here right within Planning Maestro, as well as some advanced BI dashboard presentation style reporting here in Analytics Maestro, which we'll dive into a little bit later in the presentation. And also, right within Planning Maestro, we also have some ad hoc dashboards in here to kind of give you, whether it's variance reporting, kind of drill in and drill out where needed, as well as track my workflow again in a nice clean dashboard as well. So I can kind of see, who's doing what, what's been submitted, what's still in progress. So you can have much more vision and flexibility, all in a single source, which is Planning Maestro. Great. So, let's come into the planning section here. Let's kind of always start off in the operating expense section. I'll just cover some basics and fundamentals of the tool and then really drill in here. But as you can see here, kind of starts off this simple. We have a simple Excel-like grid and feel coming across here, where a user could just simply come in, plug in numbers monthly as they go. We have our monthly totals automatically tallying up top here for my particular part of the organization. In this case, it's my admin department. It's very easy, as someone who oversees the budget to kind of navigate throughout the solution. If I wanted to come in, maybe just come into my marketing department instead, and simply just open this up, kind of click on my marketing department, and I'm now seeing that data here, as opposed to kind of going through Excel and clicking through tabs. I have my filters up top here. I'm just picking and choosing what I want to view here. But what we also want to show you is that we have the ability to add additional granularity. So again, Planning Maestro is designed to enforce your chart of accounts and structural hierarchies one-to-one, but no, we don't necessarily hold you to it. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to come in, filter out by this one GL account number. In this case, 6700, my travel account. It's going to simply click on that. I'm going to drag my account number right into my filters here. So as you see here, we have the same GL account, the same department code, but in this case, we're actually seeing 5 levels of detail. So within Planning Maestro, really going to have that ability to budget as granular as you need below that GL line. But maybe even inversely. Now I might want to look at or isolate a particular account number, maybe across departments or across projects or company codes. Something like maybe utilities as an example. I can now simply click on utilities. I'm going to drag my account number this time right over my department codes. So I'm now seeing all of my utilities across the various departments that I have access to. So, end of the day, these input screens are very customizable, really going to have the ability to filter and work by any subset of data that you need. So, really there's 3 main ways that you would enter data into the system. The first way, again, could just simply, be that manual process, kind of have department heads come in, plug in numbers as they go. Second way is what we call simple auto, where I'm just simply coming in and I'm adding in a yearly amount and automatically spreading it throughout the year. Now, as I said earlier, we have a number of kind of common spreads built into the tool. Maybe I just want to spread something, evenly over my year, monthly amount, quarterly end, quarterly start. But if you had any sort of seasonal spread or any other yearly spread or trend, you could very easily configure that into the tool. For this overhead, at the moment, I'm just breaking it out quarterly. Maybe I want to switch that and just spread it evenly instead. I can simply make that change. These numbers automatically reallocates the proper months. The third way is what we call data links. So in many cases, you may want to calculate something or drive something based on other factors in the solution. A few examples here. First off, my office rental. This is being driven based upon my square footage driver coming from my driver section, multiplied by my rate per square foot. Another example here, one of my travel lines. This is actually being driven based upon the number of trips that I plan to take, multiplied by my average rate per trip. Now, what you're seeing here is really something that is fundamentally different from our solution to most others in the marketplace today. Planning Maestro gives you the ability to, build these calculations and build these business relationships in English. How you or how a department head might actually think about building up a budget and a forecast. In other solutions, this simple example calculation could end up being a spider web of programming or an Excel. Now you might think function terminology, equals E6 times B7 and 10 different spreadsheets. With Planning Maestro, you'll simply have a list of completely customizable and configurable drivers or assumptions where, again, I'm simply coming in and I'm picking and choosing what factors I want to play the part in my calculation. You also never lose visibility either. So if I wanted to drill in and see exactly what makes up this number, I can simply open up my details pane here in the bottom left. And again, you see here, number of trips, rate per trip to drive my expenses month to month. Office rental, same thing. Square footage, rate per square foot to drive my expenses month to month. So end of the day, each number that you put into this tool, it can be as simple or as sophisticated as you want or need it to be. Now, another one of the true claims to fame of Planning Maestro, something that really sets us apart from a lot of the other competitors in this marketplace is essentially as you're building, these P&L assumptions, Planning Maestro is going to be completely automating your balance sheet and cash flow projections for you. Planning Maestro is really the only solution in the marketplace today, with that integrated out-of-the-box balance sheet and cash flows. As simple as defining, your payment terms and expenses, your receivable terms and sales and income. And Planning Maestro is going to be able to handle the rest for you. So again, this is a pretty huge feature here in and of itself. Really we're taking an inherent 3-step process. Budgeting for kind of expenses, revenue, budgeting for a P&L, then using that P&L to estimate a balance sheet, and then using that P&L and balance sheet to estimate a cash flow. And with all sorts of, function terminology and equations in Excel, if somebody adds a new line, it can completely break the formula and you can kind of lose all that granularity. Planning Maestro does all of this out of the box. And I'm sure, as Jason can attest, it saves him a lot of time and energy during budgeting season and in forecasting. Planning Maestro also gives you the ability to budget and forecast out multiple years. Our system rolls out literally as many years as you need it to, 80 years, 90 years, probably way more than you'll ever need, but the option's there if you need it with ease. If I simply switch this from 1 year to maybe a 5-year, or say a 2-year forecast, these expenses, that's going to keep on rolling out, until you give it a further assumption, maybe an incremental year-over-year increase, or maybe some sort of term date. We have start dates and end dates built into every section of the tool, but we'll show you a couple other tools that can really complement that, and why a lot of companies, they have adopted some form of a rolling budget or a mid-year forecast if they aren't already doing so today, when bringing on a more sophisticated solution like Planning Maestro. Now, let's come into the revenue section here. But I do just want to point out, a lot of what we've already covered so far, it works very consistently throughout the rest of the solution. So, a lot of the basics that we've talked about in the expense section, it applies to how a lot of clients typically like to budget and forecast their revenue. But we do have a lot of specific tools that are built into this area of the product that could be, industry specific or even company specific, such as different types of payer mixes for healthcare organizations, or utilization rates, inventory or component costing, for manufacturing organizations, cost of sales, cost of goods sold, driver-based budgeting. And you see here, we have this input orientation. So, line by line, I can define each revenue or income stream, based on whether I want to budget in dollars or in units. Units are really just a general term, can essentially mean anything you need it to. For example, maybe it's billable hours or patient days, units of a product sold, mileage, you name it. Then you can also define a price and a cost as well. Even these could be taken to an entirely different level. Maybe you want to drive your cost, based on a percentage of price, or cost based on a percentage of the total revenue. Maybe even break out costs into multiple components, various related costs. Maybe things like direct labor, materials, overhead, logistics, so on and so forth. Another thing that we can do, since that business logic and intelligence is built into the solution, is the ability to defer revenue or income. So you see here, we're booking an assumption in period 1, actually recognizing it evenly throughout the year. And in this case, the cash is coming in 30 days later. Pretty simplified example, but this could be handled in all sorts of extravagant ways. Could even go across multiple years if need be. Remember, our system is always rolling out. So if you need to defer over, say, 18 months, 24 months, maybe over the life of a contract, we could do that very easily. But bottom line here is, however these sales end up getting booked, however you need to recognize that revenue month to month, however the cash comes in, as well as to whatever level of detail and granularity you want to break this down by. This can all be completely customizable and at your discretion. Now, speaking of that level of granularity, we also find that in this section, a lot of our clients, they want to work by a few additional fields or dimensions. Might not just be as simple as breaking down your revenue by an account number and a department, but I also maybe want to break things down by a project code, or maybe even a product line, or a customer, maybe a company code, something along those lines. So, within Planning Maestro, you're really going to have the ability to set up an unlimited set of these dimensions for the ability to filter, work by, budget across, slice and dice reports across truly any part of the organization that you need. Now, let's come into the personnel in the payroll section here. Now, while the simplest of budgets, may account for workforce expenses as just another line item, really this day and age, payroll takes up far too large a portion of the budget to, take such a simplified approach. With Planning Maestro, we allow you to budget by position, or even right down into the individual level, wherever necessary. It's very common to even, take your existing list of employees, from your HR system and load it right into Planning Maestro, for that accuracy in the detail. So not only are you budgeting for, things like salaries and start dates and differentiating the FTE versus the headcount, but we can even model out all of the different expenses that are related to each employee. So while you still could budget just a high level flat fringe rate, in Planning Maestro, you're actually able to come in and budget all of the appropriate tax and benefit rates, with the exact caps on things like the FICA expense, maybe even a waiting period on things like health insurance, maybe a date of hire plus say 3 months. So truly with less effort than before, you'll have more accuracy, detail, and power over, more than likely the largest expense of your business with Planning Maestro. Now, building and kind of configuring that initial budget is, really just the beginning. As we've learned, things, they sometimes don't turn out the way we expect. So, it's important to be prepared for that inevitability. So let's talk a little bit about scenario planning and forecasting. So, many scenarios that you want to run, in a lot of cases are based on, increasing or decreasing certain figures and variables. Hey, what if I want to give everybody a 3% pay increase in January? What are the financial impacts of that? What if we decide to delay a project 4 months? What are the financial impacts of that? Our what if scenario wizard is going to specifically handle that requirement. I'll be able to come in here, truly slice and dice my data any which way that I need to. Whether I want to come in and create a scenario based off of last year's actuals or based off a budget version that I've already created, and then slice and dice from there. If I just want to go after a handful of revenue accounts or expense accounts or any statistical accounts, units, rates, headcount, slice and dice that, by company code, for example, or department, product line. Pick and choose what factors you'd want to change. Whether it's coming in and changing the spread or the trend of a number, adding in a percentage increase or decrease, maybe even shifting the entire start date of some sort of project or initiative. So, within Planning Maestro, really going to have that ability to slice and dice your data and make those mass assumptions across any part of the organization that you need. So, the real power of Planning Maestro, it lies in this version control. Now, you can have, over 1,000 versions to run best and worst cases, even track different revisions, during the annual planning and forecasting process. Now, again, why you may just want to make some of those mass assumptions with our What If Wizard. Now, Planning Maestro provides fully functional versions, meaning that the full modeling power of our solution is at your fingertips, version by version, and you can make more definitive business decisions. Perhaps you might want to model out a structural change, maybe an expansion or delay funding for a project, or model out an acquisition, launch a new service, or change a commodity price. Now, really, with this kind of control, anything could be possible. And you'll have the ability to compare any scenario to any other, really meaning you're no longer limited to that one way that you built the model years ago. Now, Planning Maestro even takes this another step further with forecasting. So as often as you want, whether it's every month, every quarter, semi-annually, you can splice in actuals, from your general ledger with your remaining budget. Then have that visibility to come in and, make those business decisions as to how you want to adjust the next 3 months, 6 months, 18 months. And so you really have that true dynamic rolling budget. This is also what many people typically think of when they want to see a forecast. With Planning Maestro reporting, you have a simple way to see what your forecast is when you're, for example, 3 months in. Or here we're seeing 3 months of actuals spliced in with my remaining 9 months of budget. Even have the ability to dynamically shift this out to, let's say, a 6 this easily. But this process, it may only get you so far. And when you look at this and don't necessarily like the trend you're seeing, you may want to come in and make those course corrections. Planning Maestro is going to allow you to create an entirely new version where you can utilize all of these same powerful tools to make true business decisions as you're adjusting, the course of the business. So, now that we've started to talk a little bit about reporting, I want to start by pointing out, within Planning Maestro on day one, you're going to have a number of, standard reports built into the tool. Comes with kind of your standard GAAP compliant P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, so on. But the bottom line here is because we have this, financial intelligence and logic built into the tool. Now you've seen throughout this demonstration, Planning Maestro does the math for you in each section. It automates all the debits and credits. As you're building P&L, we're automating balance sheet and cash flow, so on and so forth. So unlike other tools, you do not have to, program in how you want to roll up the accounts and then program in some sort of math. Planning Maestro already knows how to do these calculations. So all you have to do is simply define, how you want to roll up the accounts and really just drag and drop them anywhere on the report. Really have full flexibility when it comes to creating and customizing these report layouts. So as I drill into a consolidated P&L, I can now drill all the way down into my lowest level of detail. Here's my, my salaries. Here's my office rental. My utilities that we talked about earlier in the expense section. Right now this is a month-over-month report. Now, if I wanted to break this down, maybe just to a quarterly result, or maybe even just a yearly result, simply do that. Press refresh, and my year pops in. Maybe I want to take this and then slice it across all of my departments. Simply just drag and drop that in. Press refresh, all my departments come across the top here. Maybe I want to drill in a little bit deeper to some payroll figures. Simply come in, I have a payroll report, kind of building up. If I wanted to see the person by person implications of this, simply drag in that naming convention. My people come in, take that, slice it across departments. As you can see, you can kind of just slice and dice this data any which way you need to. Run variance reports, dollar variances, percent variances. All you care about, is the numbers, the results. You're going to get everything you need here out of Planning Maestro. Then we also have, our next level, BI, dashboard, presentation style reporting here in Analytics Maestro. But at the end of the day, could have pretty easily created this type of report in Planning Maestro, exported out to Excel, built all these pretty charts and graphs around it. But if this is something that I'm doing, on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, sending out to department heads, executives, the board, the bank, what have you, I have zero desire to come in and build this entire book of reports every time I need them. With our advanced reporting, you're literally building these reports, these layouts one time, and then you're done. All the most up-to-date information automatically feeds in via Planning Maestro. Even if someone comes in, overwrites this data, mistakes happen. Somebody come in, press refresh sheet, most up-to-date data goes right back to where it needs to be. We have another sample dashboard here, revenue, expense, net income with some of our key charts and graphs built around it. And we have a year-over-year budget to actual comparison report with some of our key sample metrics and KPIs built in on the bottom. At the end of the day, truly going to be able to create and customize really any report that you need. And during our comprehensive training program, that's exactly what we aim to do. We don't just train you on static data. We're actually coming in, we're building your structure, your chart of accounts, your dimensions, your revenue and expense models, and custom report layouts and KPIs. And in turn, hopefully the first pass of your budget and or forecast, during that training process. But again, might not just be about P&L, but also maybe year over year balance sheet. Again, the ability to simply drill in, double click, see my detail, right click, zoom back out. Cash flow, right into that same level of detail. Maybe even some non-financial accounts, the various drivers and statistics on my budget. Things like headcount, total hours, planned hours for a number of years, coming across the various parts of my organization. But, again, end of the day, the sky, it truly is a limit. You're going to be able to put these reports into really any format that you need with any data residing in Planning Maestro. You can also slice and dice your data out here as well. If I want to double click and drill into a certain company or below that, a certain department in my corporate department, or drill into a certain period of time, or drill into maybe period 5. We also have an automated report distribution function here as well. Or I can essentially set up a mailing list. Maybe John in marketing might need these 5 reports filtered on marketing. And maybe the president, the CEO, board of directors, they may want every report at the consolidated level, so on and so forth. So, in terms of the product demonstration, that's really all I had planned for now. I'm going to turn it back over to Jason to kind of cover a few more concepts as well as open up for the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Hey, Jason, I'm giving you back control.
Great.
It looks good.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for that demo. That was great. And that was really just a quick peek at some of the functionality of the platform. I'd really encourage folks that are interested, please go to Centage.com, get a hold of one of our resources. They'd be happy to show you more and dig in a bit deeper with you. Okay, so just a couple quick slides here to tie things up. And like Mike said, I think we'll try to leave some time for Q&A. Look, the message is pretty simple here today, right? Get your budget, get your plan, get your forecast out of Excel. Get out of that legacy tool. If you're still using Excel, get into a modern solution. The slide here talks about combating inefficiencies, but really what it comes down to for me is setting yourself, your team, and your organization up for success. Now, as you're looking to make that transition, I wanted to point out some things that you should think about. Number one, implementation time. A lot of finance teams, including mine here at Centage, operate very lean. And a long, labor-intensive implementation would be painful for a lot of reasons. So you want something that can get up and running relatively quickly. It should be easy to use from a UI and functionality perspective. It shouldn't take months and months of training to learn how to use the solution. Number three, this is important, ask about the technology stack. You want to make sure that you're getting a true, modern, cloud-based solution because of the speed and the security that comes along with that. And then finally, does the platform offer the flexibility that your team needs? Make sure you understand all the features and think about how you're going to use those features today and as your organization grows. So we've covered quite a bit today with kind of the message and the demo, but I'll leave you with this. For those of you who have had your frustrations with your planning and budgeting process, there is a better way. It doesn't have to be frustrating. You don't have to spend your nights and weekends trying to figure out which formula in your 50 megabyte Excel model is broken. One more story, the story that I like to tell is, so I brought someone to Centage that I worked with previously at another company, and through the planning process, we wanted to make a change that our leadership was requesting. We did it in the solution, and he looked at me and said, "This would have taken us forever to do in our old Excel model." And like that moment to me was so powerful, and it really just kind of emphasizes that there is a better way. I really like the last bullet here on this slide. Align your technology with your future success. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. The technology that we have available to us today, it exists so that we can leverage it and be successful, so that we can personally be successful, our teams can be successful, and our organizations can be successful. So again, I thank everyone very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. On behalf of myself, Mike, and Courtney, we really enjoyed this, and I hope that you found it to be informational as well. And Courtney, I think we want to open it up to see if there are any questions out there, right?
Yes, thank you, Jason. We're going to now open it up for questions. So if you have any questions, just a reminder, please enter them into the questions section of your GoToWebinar. And I know we already have a couple of questions that have come in, so I'll go ahead and ask our first question. We have someone who's managing expenses tightly. They said they spend most of their days pushing back on incremental expense requests from the business. How do I turn around and make a case for this investment?
That's a great question. And why don't I take that one, Courtney? So yeah, great question. I appreciate the question, and it's one of the interesting part of our roles as finance leaders, right? We have to be mindful of expenses and how we're spending, but we also need to know and identify when it is appropriate to invest and when it makes sense to invest. So, where I've personally been successful in gaining support, if you will, for this type of investment is when that current legacy process or legacy tool like Excel that we've been talking about has led you and your team down a path that was less than optimal. So you and your CEO and your leadership team come out of that board meeting or come out of that investment meeting where they just weren't impressed with your plan or your budget. You didn't have the ability to drill into the assumptions. You weren't able to provide clear answers, right? And you're looking at each other and you're like, where do we go from here? How do we learn from this? And think about what your options are there. Some of the things you could do, you could go out and hire a top-notch FP&A analyst to help you with your budget model. We know that's gonna cost you $100K at least all in, or you can make this investment in something like Planning Maestro at a fraction of that cost. So I've personally kind of been down that path and kind of used that type of experience with my CEO and my leadership team to gain support for this type of investment. And I hope that helps.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. And we've also had another question. How long does it take to get Planning Maestro up and running? How much of a time investment would I be placing on my team?
Great question, and I can take that one. So yeah, I'd say the average implementation for Planning Maestro is about 6 to 8 weeks. And the beauty is that our consulting team does about 90 to 95% of that heavy lifting, getting the integration set up, getting your structure into the tool, building your drivers, building out the model, and then we train you in your data. So in those 6 to 8 weeks, we probably need 20 to 30 hours of your time. Obviously, we know everyone's busy and has a day job, so yeah, it's very fast and efficient to get up and running with a system like Planning Maestro.
Awesome. And our next question is, would I have control over access and permissions to the tool? If I wanted to give my HR leader access to only the headcount/hiring module, is that possible?
It is, yeah. So at the very beginning of the demonstration, I showed our workflow piece. So yeah, that's where you can come in and define security so that, each person you bring into the tool, whether it's the, marketing manager or the HR manager, or, sales, VP, what have you, they're just going to be able to see what you want them to see and edit what you want them to edit. So, yep, we'll be able to get them set up so they're just seeing whether it's a certain module, just the payroll section, or just a certain department, the marketing department. So, absolutely can define that.
Great, and we've had some more questions come in. So, a couple different other tools. We would like to know if it will integrate with Acumatica and QuickBooks, and also if it's Sage X3 compatible.
The answer is yes to all of those. So yeah, we have about 20 or so out of the box integrations. All the Sage products being one, Acumatica, QuickBooks. So yep, yeah, we have integrations to all of the major kind of mid-market ERP systems out there. But end of the day, any general ledger that you have, we're able to set up an automation to get your data into our system.
Great. And then I have another slightly longer question, so bear with me. How flexible is the tool for modeling rental cost? We have multiple stores, warehouses, and shipping rooms. Each has a very different characteristics. We also do both long range, international, and domestic travel, which have different cost characteristics. Do we need to enter each item as a separate item?
Not necessarily. So yeah, I mean, end of the day, Planning Maestro gives you the ability to budget as high level or as low level as you need. So yeah, if you wanted to have that granularity in each of your rental properties and the different rates and characteristics of that, yeah, we would load them in so that you can get that detail. International travel, local travel, we can certainly create even global drivers where certain people can use them for this or that. So yeah, don't necessarily have to have every single factor in there, but yeah, we can certainly find a way to kind of to make that a bit more efficient than Excel today.
Great, thank you, Mike. And it looks like that is all of our questions for today. Again, thank you so much, Jason and Mike, for such a great presentation and for taking the time to be with us today. And we'd also like to thank everyone for attending this webinar, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.